Hello students, good morning. So we'll continue with the chapter solid state, and we've come to the end of this chapter, my dear students. As I mentioned in the previous video, in this last part of the chapter we'll be dealing with properties associated with solids. So I'd like to quickly recap all that we did so far, and then I'll take it ahead. So in this chapter we've done different types of solids. One is crystalline solids and amorphous solids. As I mentioned at the beginning, I said we'll be focusing specifically on crystalline solids. So we did classification of crystalline solids. We looked at different types of crystalline solids in that classification. Then we went on to see uh, the packing in solids. We looked at the unit cells, the Bravais lattices, those 14 Bravais lattices that were available. We looked at the voids, no, the voids that are created, tetrahedral void and octahedral void. We looked at packing efficiency of those three unit cells, that is SCC, BCC, and FCC. And the last thing that we saw was defects. There are different types of defects in crystalline solids. Okay. Now, in this video, my dear students, we'll be looking at properties associated with solids. To begin with, we will look at electrical properties. A very, very important property associated with solids has to be to do with the electrical nature. Okay. Now, as you know, my dear students, solids can have three types of electrical properties. They can be conductors, they can be non-conductors, or they can be semiconductors, right? So conductors, they are basically solids having electrical conductivities in the range 104 to 107 per ohm per meter. Okay, they are called as conductors. Now metals and electrolytes are basically ionic solids, are examples of electrical conductors. So basically these metals and electrolytes, they conduct electricity. That's the meaning of electrical conductors. Metals conduct electricity by movement of electrons. So movement of electrons is essential for conduction of electricity. So while electrolytes conduct electricity by movement of ions. So what are electrolytes? Electrolytes are basically liquids. Okay, so they conduct electricity by movement of ions, whereas metals, which are solids, they conduct electricity by movement of electrons in it. Correct? Now let's take a look at those different types of material which fall under the category of conductors, insulators, and semiconductors. Okay, so we've already looked at conductors. Let's take a look at insulators. Now, conductors, while they're called as good conductors, insulators are actually bad conductors. No, the other name for bad conductors is insulators, or vice versa. So solids having low electrical conductivities in the range 10 raised to minus 20 to 10 raised to minus 10 ohm per ohm per meter are called insulators. Now, what elements come under insulators? Mostly they are non-metals and molecular solids. Okay. Now, remember, in conductors, what did we say? Mostly there are metals and electrolytes, but in bad conductors or insulators, okay, they are mostly non-metals and molecular solids. Now here is a pictorial representation of how electrons make a substance a conductor or an insulator or a semiconductor. Now looking at this diagram, this blue part, it shows filled valence band. Filled valence band means the electrons are filled in that valence shell. There is a forbidden zone, a large energy gap between this conduction band, which is empty, and this filled valence band. Since there is a lot of gap, that's why there is no conduction taking place in these kind of substances. There is a large energy gap, as you can see here. Okay, but in the case of conductors, my dear students, I've not shown a diagram here, but you'll understand, I'm sure, that this blue and this empty, they are joined. No, there is no gap at all in the case of conductors. That's why they can conduct easily. Since there is no energy gap at all, these electrons can easily get transferred to this conduction band, and that's how conduction takes place in the case of conductors. Okay, but since we're talking about bad conductors, that means they shouldn't be conducting at all. That's why there is a large energy gap. So that is about conductors and non-conductors or insulators. What are these semiconductors? Now, semiconductors, they are solids having electrical conductivities in the range 10 raised to minus 6 to 10 raised to 4 per ohm per meter. Now, verbally, I'm telling you this, that this is 10 raised to minus 20, this is 10 raised to minus 10, but on the screen, it looks as if it is 10 raised to 10 minus 20, 10 raised to minus 10. So please be very careful. Okay, so it's 10 raised to minus 20 here, 10 raised to minus 10, and this is 10 raised to minus 6, 10 raised to 4. So when I send you the notes, my dear students, I'll make this slight change in the notes, and then I'll send it to you. So even this is ohm raised to minus 1, m raised to minus 1. So these are semiconductors. This range, my dear students, is intermediate. It is between conductors and insulators. So they are neither proper conductors nor insulators. So metalloids like silicon, germanium belong to this category. So what exactly semiconductors are? Okay, semiconductors basically what they do is they are poor conductors. Okay, they are poor conductors, which means there is a very small energy gap. Now in the case of insulators there is a huge gap here, but in the case of semiconductors there is a very small gap between this filled valence band and this empty conduction band. So since this gap can be any time be joined, wherein you know s- this electrons from this valence band can jump to the conduction band and, and start conducting. Okay, so such kind of substances, they are called as semiconductors. Now there is a concept called doping. Okay, now what is this doping? Doping is basically uh, responsible for conductivity in semiconductors. Remember, I told you semiconductors, they are poor conductors, but if I want that semiconductor to work as a conductor, it can be done by the process of doping. Now what is this doping? The process of addition of minute quantities of impurities to a semiconductor to increase its conductivity is called doping. So the added impurity is called dopant, right? A doped semiconductor having higher conductivity than pure intrinsic semiconductor is an extrinsic semiconductor. So if I have a doped semiconductor, okay, a doped semiconductor means what is added is a minute quantity of impurity, okay, to increase its conductivity, that is doping. So if I have a doped semiconductor, okay, which has got higher conductivity than the pure intrinsic semiconductor, okay, it's called as an extrinsic semiconductor. Okay, now there are two types of extrinsic semiconductors. What are these extrinsic semiconductors, my dear students? To an already existing semiconductor, if I add something, okay, which eventually raises or increases the conductivity, that semiconductor is called as extrinsic semiconductor. Now, what are the two types? One is N type. N stands for negative, and there is P type. P stands for positive. So N type semiconductor and P type semiconductor. Now, what is N type semiconductor? Now, N type semiconductor contains increased number of electrons. Remember, I told you it's negative. That means negative stands for electrons, because electrons are negative. That means it must have extra electrons in the conduction band. Okay. Now, an N type semiconductor is obtained by adding group 15 element to intrinsic semiconductor which belongs to group 14. Okay, so like phosphorus, so group 15 element like phosphorus. Remember, group 14 elements, they are mostly metalloids. Now silicon is a metalloid which is a group 14 element. So if I want N type semiconductor to be formed, I need to add an element with more electrons. That more electrons, I'll get it from where? From an element with a higher group. So from group 14 I go to an element from group 15. Okay, so that is how N type semiconductor is obtained. What about P type semiconductor? P means positive, that means there should be one electron less. Okay, when the electrons are less, automatically that becomes a positive type or a P type semiconductor. A P type semiconductor, how is it produced? It is produced by doping a pure semiconductor material, okay, like silicon or germanium. Remember, these are metalloids, they're pure semiconductors. Now they are doped with an impurity of group 13 elements. Now group 13 is one electron less than group 14 element, correct? So group 13 elements like boron, it has got one electron less. Okay, that's how I get a P type semiconductor. In N type semiconductor, I choose an element from group 15, and in P type semiconductor, I choose an element from group 13. Okay, a very important concept in electrical properties. So if at all a question comes from this, there will be definition of n-type semiconductor or definition of p-type semiconductor. Okay, so let's take a look at this diagram here. So n-type and p-type. So in the form of bands, now this is your valence band and this is a conduction band for n-type. So there is, since it's n-type, there's one extra electron because of that group 15 element. That's why in conduction band you'll find that extra electron. Whereas over here in p-type semiconductor, the valence band has got one electron less. So there is a hole that is created over here. That's why it becomes a p-type, so plus. Okay, positive type semiconductor. You can see here the hole where my cursor is. Okay, the next property, my dear student, just now we looked at electrical properties. We'll look at the final thing in this chapter, that is magnetic properties. No? So magnetic properties, there are three types of properties related to magnetism in solids. There is diamagnetic, there is paramagnetic, and there is ferromagnetic. We'll quickly take a look at that. So the spinning electrons in any element or any atom, my dear students, they act like tiny magnets because their spinning action generates induced magnetic field. Remember, there are electrons in every atom and they keep spinning, right? And that spinning electrons, they act like tiny magnets. So if an orbital contains one electron, the unbalanced spin exhibits magnetism. Okay, remember in the chapter nature of chemical bond, I did tell you if there are unpaired electrons, it causes, see in that box configuration, there is one pointing upwards and one pointing downwards, so there is an opposite spin, correct? So if there's only one electron, that means there is only one spin taking place, that is an unbalanced spin. Okay, that's why it exhibits magnetism. However, when electrons are paired, their spin is balanced and no magnetic properties observed. Remember when I was teaching you paramagnetic and diamagnetic? Diamagnetism is shown by those elements wherein the electrons are paired, and if the electrons are not paired, that means it shows paramagnetism. So on the basis of magnetic properties, solids are classified into three major classes: diamagnetic, paramagnetic, and ferromagnetic. Diamagnetic solids are what? The substances with all electrons paired. Okay, so they are weakly repelled by magnetic fields, so they don't show any magnetic property. Paramagnetism, they've got unpaired electrons in it. Okay, so the spinning of unpaired electrons gives rise to a magnetic moment. Magnetic moment is just a term used to measure magnetism. Okay, the substance is attracted by magnetic field because of magnetic moment. Okay, these substances exhibit magnetism in presence of external magnetic field only. They lose magnetism when external magnetic field is removed. Okay, so elements like oxygen, copper, iron, chromium are some examples of paramagnetic substances. So they do have unpaired electrons. Okay, and finally the last type of magnetic property is ferromagnetism. Ferromagnetism is a higher or a better form of paramagnetic property. Ferromagnetism means they are very, very strong magnets. So the substances containing large number of unpaired electrons. In the case of paramagnetism is, they have not mentioned large number or small number. As long as there is even one unpaired electron, it comes under the category of paramagnetism. But in the case of ferromagnetism, if there are large number of unpaired electrons, for example in iron, now why do we play with iron? When it comes to magnetism, suppose if we are playing with a magnet, generally we try to look at uh, an iron bar or iron rod for that magnet to get stuck, because iron is a very, very strong magnetic substance. It's not a magnet, it's a magnetic substance. It attracts magnets. Okay, so such substances, uh, they are attracted strongly by magnetic field, and that's why they're called as ferromagnetic in nature. Okay, these substances can be permanently magnetized. They retain magnetism even after the removal of external magnetic field. So iron, cobalt, nickel, gadolinium, so all these elements, my dear students, under a certain process they can be permanently magnetized. Okay, so this is the end of this chapter, my dear students. Okay, to do with solid state. So the entire theory I have covered, I'll be sending you these notes for your reference. Okay, and also I'll be sending you question answers for you to write it down. Okay? Thank you and God bless you. I'll see you in the class next week.